Spread the fire. Welcome back to SMWX. So good to be with you all again. So much going on, and I am extremely excited today to be joined by Makashule Gana, who has thrown his hat in the ring to be Interim DA Leader, a seasoned politician within the DA and also a seasoned legislator in our country. And Mr. Gana,
yes.
It's so great to have you. I remember we first met when I invited you to speak at a debating competition years and years ago.
Yeah, no, thanks. And it's great to finally make my official debut to SMWX. The last time we spoke, it was at a rally. At least some people, your audience got to see a bit of me, but this is the first time I actually come here. And we come a long way. I think then it was 2009 elections.
Yeah, it was.
I think it was the 2009 general elections, and we're still here 10 years later.
Here we are.
Still have to continue doing what we have to do for South Africa.
You're still fighting battles, that's all I can say.
That's why when we die, we say rest in peace, because that's when you get to rest from fighting the various battles that we face as mankind.
It's funny, let's talk about 2009 to now, because the narrative is that, the DA has shed all this support and it's a crisis, it's an emergency. Part of that, I think, is informed by the fact that you did so well in 2016 and, your growth was so rapid that the setback, as it were, in 2019 in some ways contrasts against that. But the party has still grown quite significantly. And do you think that the narrative right now is maybe a bit overblown, or is there a real crisis?
I believe that the narrative is a bit overblown. So if we were to look at the 10-year, between 2009 and 2019, you look at the growth of the DA. So one also looks at what happens in places like Soweto, places like Soshanguve, Tembisa and the likes, and you see where the DA is now as a brand, how it's accepted as a legitimate representative of the people in these communities. And you look, even if you look in terms of numbers, yes, we might we did on a factual basis, we did regress a bit in the last 5 years when you compare 2014 and 2019. But then when you compare 2009 and 2019, there's a significant growth. We are having more representatives than we had in 2009. We're having more councillors than we had in 2009. So if you only look at it in terms of an event, yes, it's true that we have regressed. But if you look at it in terms of the last 10 years, the DA has grown massively, both in terms of the actual number of people that come out to vote, and how the brand itself, up until the last couple of weeks, got to be accepted as a legitimate representative of our people.
And it feels like, I think, part of that growth was because South Africans were trying to weigh up, are you committed to this project of racial justice, which is the question that's always been asked of the party. And slowly but surely it seemed as though, even though it was taking a long time, the party was moving in that direction. And then suddenly now there's almost a moment of truth, as it were, where you've reached a ceiling from which you could go up, or you could just revert back to an older brand of policy. It just feels to me like instead of grasping the nettle and just allowing the party to go through the difficulties but then having a higher ceiling, people are panicking and they're actually going to lock the party into a lower growth trajectory with this reversion back to potentially abandoning race. I'm not saying that's happened yet, but a certain current, it seems to me, in the party wants that.
Yeah, funny enough, before I came here, I was having a conversation with our provincial chairperson to say, if we start looking at the numbers, we currently represent 3.6 million South Africans. And if we look at where the DA finds itself in, it's a strong position. Yeah, we have lost a couple of seats in Parliament, but it's still a very, very strong position. And what my fear is that you might spend most of your time worrying about the 460,000 people that did not come out to vote for you. Or you can actually roll up your sleeves and say, I've got 3.6 million people that voted for me that I need to represent. So my choice at the moment is to choose the 3.6 million. And we had an offer going to an election, and I'm happy that 3.6 million South Africans came out to support that particular offer. The conversations themselves, as you put it, Sizwe, sometimes they do get some of us worried in terms of, especially because I work in Soweto. Even when people did not vote for us, they trust us to represent their interests. So myself, for instance, I will get calls from people who didn't vote for us, but now who are accepting us. And for me, it's that or those voters that I'm more worried to say what will happen with all this fighting that's currently happening, because if we get to reverse in areas like Soweto, Mamelodi, Soshanguve, then it makes our project even more difficult. That's one of the reasons that people like myself and the activists that asked me to avail myself, saying we've got a much bigger responsibility now, because we need to clean this image, we need to clean the brand, and we need to make it acceptable again. It took us so many years. Some of us have been in this organization for 17 years, trying to make the brand help in a small way. I will never say that it's all thanks to my effort alone, but in a small way, I did contribute in making the brand acceptable in communities that the brand was not acceptable in. And now we have to do 2 times more than we used to do, and that for me is something that I'm prepared to do.
So what's it been like in constituencies like Soweto, where people are watching the former leader of the party resigning outside an election cycle, many senior leaders standing up on public platforms and saying this notion that race plays a significant role in the way disadvantage works in South Africa should be abandoned? How's that playing in those kinds of constituencies?
To be honest, it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy, especially when even your core voters, your core activists, saying that no, we cannot continue to work. And the voters, as they meet me, they're expressing their unhappiness with how the whole resignations, both of Musi and Herman, seem to have been handled. And like a funny thing was this past weekend when I was running, running the Soweto Marathon, many runners who know that I'm in the DA will ask me as I'm running to say, but Chief, what's happening in your organization?
Did you run away then?
like, hey, are you running away from your DA troubles? And I was like, no, I'm actually trying to we need to help rebuild the brand, because it is my belief that South Africa needs a strong DA. It doesn't need a weekend DA, and we need to make it much stronger. So for me, when you start getting those comments, it means something that people were not expecting from us has happened, and that we need to work extra hard to correct it and to make the brand acceptable again.
So just take us into what it was like for you, because a lot of our subscribers don't really know what it's like to be in that position. You're a senior politician, you've been in the party for a long time, then suddenly this major event happens. Where were you when you realized that Helen Zille was coming back, that Musi Maimane and Herman Mashaba were going to resign, and how did you find out about it?
So, what? I mean, I was part of the meeting that elected Helen.
Right.
So I was there when the announcement happened.
Quick question on that. What was that meeting like? I'm just so interested, and of course, as far as you can tell us, but what was the room like? Was it very tense? Were people pretending to be cordial?
No, I mean, the meeting itself was more to look at the review that was headed by Ryan Kotze and Tony Leon and Michiel. And people made their views known. And then there were resolutions. The meeting was a cordial meeting. Obviously, in a political the political space, it does get a bit robust because we might belong in the same organizations, but we sometimes see things differently. And that's what makes the organization grow. Just because we are in the same organization doesn't mean that we always have to see everything the same way, because otherwise the organization will not grow. And then when the results were announced, everyone accepted the results as an outcome of a democratic process. Then I think on that day, I spoke to Mayor Mashaba, and he was like, me, I knew on Sunday that he's going to resign the following day.
So it was that early that you knew? Yeah,
so I knew on Sunday.
Did you call him, or did he call you? Or?
No, I called him.
Okay.
I called him, and it said so to me. So when it happened, so when the press media alert went out, I knew what it was, and then, so that was a Monday. Monday, I'm in Cape Town. So I was supposed to be there until Thursday because we're interviewing for the DA Young Leaders program. Then on Monday, I get an email that says there's going to be an urgent federal executive. So because it was like we're going to deal with the Hemen situation. It's a Hemen situation. And then, all right, Wednesday we come. By that time, I don't know that Musi is resigning. I mean, I'm in the meeting.
Wow. So even up to that meeting, you didn't know?
No, I didn't know. Then when you're in the meeting, you can tell that, like when it's kind of tense, like something is about to happen here. And then now the speculation is happening on social media. And then obviously Musi briefs us, tells us before he tells the country to say he's resigning. At that point, it was like it's like seeing everything that you've been working towards coming down, and it affected me in ways that I didn't expect it to. And like when I got home, my wife said, I think we have lost 6 kilograms in the last 3 days. That's how much it affected me.
Yeah.
And even the following day, I had made a commitment to continue with the interviews for the young leaders, but I was not there. My thing was whether everything that one was trying to build for 17 years is coming to an end. Then you sleep a couple of days, and then you're like, no, it's not over. Then start talking to people, and then you're like, all right. People ask you, all right, avail yourself. I was not prepared to, so it's not something that I was thinking about to say, hey, if he resigns, I'm going there.
Yeah.
But because of how I felt, and it was like, all right, it's something that one can do, and that's when I started reaching out to more leaders to say, people are asking, what's your view? And eventually made that decision that I'm going to put my name forward.
Take us through what it was like to make that decision, because as a politician, as someone who's worked in the public space, I guess that the thought of that is always somewhere in your mind, you know. You want to have the most impact you can, and often in the leadership position is where you can have that impact. But the timing of that matters, you know. And why did you think that this was the right time to make yourself available for interim leader and possibly, presumably, leader of the party?
So the initial part was so you first go through, you know, like all these stages. You know. Once I accepted, I said, now I have a responsibility to rebuild the brand. You accept that the brand is damaged. You know, you don't pretend that the brand is not damaged, because you know, like when my uncle, that the only time he calls me, we discuss pirates, and then he calls me and say, "Hey, Ndoda, what's happening?" Then you know that, you know what, something has really gone wrong. It has affected more people. I was like, I can sit there and hope that someone else might come and fix the situation. I must roll up my sleeves and do it. And the process itself, it's one, you talk to yourself. I think there's I think the Friday, I went for a run, talking to myself. And then when I came back, I talked to the people close to me, politically, to say, no, I'm having this. These are the thoughts that I get when I'm running. What do you think? I said, maybe not. Maybe let's not contest. You know. Then start talking to other people across the country. And I mean, the calls were coming in from activists. Activists that love the DA, that love the country, activists that I have, for the better part of my adult life, have walked the streets, knocked on doors with. And after those conversations, I mean, I submitted my nomination on the last day. And that's when I was like, no, I think I've had enough conversations, and I'm going to do this. And that's when I put my nomination forward. Yeah. But it's a, you know, you check, because having your own thought, it's not always, you might not be correct, but it's when you test it against other people's thought, you say, no, we're going to do this.
So what direction would you like to steer the party in, and how is that different? Of course, there'll be many similarities with the other candidates, because you share a common set of assumptions on a number of issues. But what is the vision and the direction that you believe the party needs to go in?
For me, the party needs to focus on issues of social justice, on issues of economic justice, on issues of environmental justice. Because in my interactions with voters, with South Africans, it remains one of those big issues that we haven't properly addressed. Even though we've got such a great constitution that guarantees a lot of social and economic, socio-economic justice or socio-economic rights, but not much has been achieved. You know, and I think that's the space that we need to go in, and we need to be a party of individual freedom. You know, market-based, not free market. I don't believe in free markets. I believe in properly regulated markets. I believe that the state has a role to play in development. So the idea of free markets for me don't work well. And that's where I believe the DA should be playing itself in. And obviously, we must never be shy or be scared to want to redress the injustices of our past, because it is my considered view that the ANC government has not done enough. They've done something. It will not be fair on me to say they did nothing, But I don't think the legacy of apartheid and many years of colonial rule have been addressed in this country, and those are the matters that the DA needs to spearhead. Yes, there has to be economic growth, but it cannot be economic growth for its own sake. It must get people out of poverty. It must get people living longer. It must get there should be no children dying, of preventable illnesses. We must get our young kids into schools, getting quality education, and that for me is the kind of DA that I believe will address the challenges that South Africa face.
And obviously one of the big points of contestation, I think, in this moment in the party is this question of race.
Yeah.
It's, do we grasp the nettle? Do we continue with this trajectory towards a greater acknowledgement of race? Or do we pull back from that and pursue non-racism, which I think is just a term within the DA which has been taken to mean I don't even know what anymore. So it seems clear to me that you represent a current in the party that says abandoning race is a crazy idea, but there's a new, stronger, or a new strong current that says our problems came from this whole race thing. Why should the party still care about race?
The important departure point for me is that the legacy of apartheid is still here with us. And if we have to correct the wrong, which is redress, that wrong was created by apartheid. The victims were black people. You don't have to hide and say, no, the victims were people. The victims were not people. The victims were black people. I mean, that's what apartheid was from its conceptual state. And I mean, speaking honestly about our past, there's no way that we can say it's will kill the organization. So that's why I say when one looks at our offer that we made to South Africans, we made a bold statement there that we support a race-based redress, because for us, you cannot reconcile South Africa unless you have redressed the injustices of the past. Redress and reconciliation go hand in hand. We still live in a divided society. Anyone who will claim otherwise, maybe they are not living with South Africans. And in order for us to build this inclusive South Africa, we need to include people who are excluded by the past systems. And that, for me, it's important. And interestingly, the offer of a race-based redress that we had in our manifesto was supported by 3.6 million South Africans.
This is a very interesting question because
yes.
Sorry to come in and I'll let you finish that, but you just got me thinking on a very interesting path, which is let's just say, for the purposes of argument, that we remove race in DA policies, right? And then you perform similarly or worse in the next elections. Do you think there'll be the same kind of call for accountability that there was this time? Or do you think people will explain it away in all kinds of other ways? It just feels to me like people seem to want accountability, but they're using it as a mask for actually just wanting to change policy. And then once policy changes, it doesn't matter how the party does anymore.
I mean, for me, accountability is something that must always be there, but it needs to be based on real facts, not on emotions. And like I said, if one looks at an election as an event, then it means that every time there's a regress in election, people must go. Would I subscribe to that kind of thinking? No, I won't. Because I know that sometimes an idea will not bear fruits in 2-3 years. You know, people must get used to it, and the votes that we have lost, from where I am, I was confident even after the elections that with how strong the brand is, by the time we go to 2021 elections, we're going to not only get the voters back, but even increase more. But what has happened, and now we have to try to fix that part. If the idea is solid, because sometimes people, they like saying a lot of things. I was there in 2013 when Helen was still the leader then. I was vocal then, even though I was a young person, very vocal. And we adopted the statement that race is a proxy for disadvantage in 2013. So I can go back and say, what happened in 2015? Did we lose votes after we adopted that statement? No, we gained votes. In 2016, we became a government in Johannesburg, in Tshwane. We increased, I mean, in some areas, especially in the northern townships of Pretoria, in Soshanguve, your Winterfeld, we're getting close to 20% of the vote. Then now, when you come and say, no, we lost vote because you put in your manifesto that race is it's a basis for redress and disadvantage, in my head, I say, no, but that can't be true. Because if I look at the growth trajectory of the DA, it was never affected by this. So the next election we're going to have, we are going to do well because some of us are going to work. You know, I mean, people sometimes they ask, but Ghana, what will happen if you lose on the 17th? On the 18th, I wake up, I wear my DA t-shirt, and I go and campaign. Because I have lost in elections. I've contested Congress. I've lost. I wanted to be Premier of Gauteng. It didn't happen. But I became one of the primary campaigners on the ground. Because this thing, we don't do this, Sizwe, for ourselves. It's not about me. It's about the people. It's about the South Africans that are looking at us as an alternative. You know, sometimes, as politicians, we forget why we are doing what we are doing. We think we are doing it for ourselves, and that's where the problem is that people start thinking about themselves rather than thinking about the South Africans that are out there, the millions of South Africans that are out there that are still living in poverty, that still have to take 4 taxis to get to work, and they have to leave home at 4 o'clock in the morning to get to Sandton at 8 o'clock. You left home at 4, you get at 8, then you leave there at 5, you get home at 9. At what point do you get to be a parent? Then we are surprised that in the schools in Orange Farm and the likes, or in Hammanskraal, they are not performing at the rate like the schools closer here around Sandton. One of the reasons is because the parents don't have time to be parents. And those are the issues that the DA must be addressing. The issues of where are the people staying vis-a-vis where they are working. And that's the DA that some of us are working to ensure that it's built. And that for me is what I'm passionate about. So the accountability aspect will come. If people believe that they want to go to a situation where after every election, it's like when Chiefs and Pirates plays, we say as a coach of Pirates, when you lose to Chiefs, you are fired. Which means every time there's a regression in elections, then you go. What kind of a party is that? It will never be a growing party. I will never really support that kind of a thing. But if what people want to have that as a precedence, then we'll have to allow them to also drink their own medicine.
Well, I suspect come the 18th, It's going to be an important moment, but whether you win or lose, I suspect we'll be hearing a lot more from you in the decade between 2019 and 2029.
Yeah, whatever happens, on the 18th you'll hear from me, regardless of the results. And on the 18th I'll be wearing my DA t-shirt, regardless of the results. Because I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing it for that mother in Hammanskraal, that mother in the Vaal that has to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to come and work in the factories in Sandton and have to take 4 taxis back home and get home at 9 o'clock to say one day in my lifetime, through my efforts, you are going to be a parent. If you don't get to be a parent, at least your grandchildren must not go through what your children went through. That you are spending 8 hours on the road trying to earn as little as possible to provide for your family. That for me is a South African that I want to represent. The one that says, I've got skill, I've got ability, I just want an opportunity. That's who I'm working for.
Makashule Gana, thanks for gracing us with a sterling debut on SMWX.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thanks,
Thank
bro.
you.
Ayeye. Thanks for watching the content. Like, share and subscribe on all platforms. smwx.co.za to join the WhatsApp channel. And let's build a new conversation for a new generation. Ayeye.